Evelyn's house. Evelyn Harris woke to the same light she always had, a thin, pale strip that crawled across the bedroom carpet and touched the foot of her slipper. It was the kind of morning that asked nothing of anyone, no demands, no appointments, no text messages buzzing. Outside, the maple in the yard was already stirring. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked the slow, steady way it had for 2 decades, the second hand like a metronome for small rituals. She moved through the house like a woman who had memorized every inch of it. The hallway runner had a frayed edge where 3 children had once chased one another with toothless grins and wooden swords. The living room lamp still wore the faded silk shades her husband, Arthur, had chosen 50 years ago. She traced the edge of a framed black and white photograph with fingers that still remembered how to be steady. Arthur's smile in that photo was the one that used to melt away whatever grief might come. He had been gone 8 years now. She still kept his slippers by the bed. Evelyn was 78. Her hair had gone soft and white, and age had given her face the map of a life lived. She liked to think the map read honest, small disappointments and big mercies in equal measure. She had worked in the public library for 30 years. She had baked pies for school fundraisers and tended a garden that stubbornly refused to be tamed but always gave back tomatoes. She had taught her children to say please and thank you and, most importantly, to believe that family meant something that outlasted seasons. That morning, she opened the refrigerator and found a note taped to the door. "Evie, please come downstairs. Important. Carol."
That afternoon June came by with boxes. "We'll start tonight," she said. "We can do some packing while you still have time to pick what you want to keep. We'll be quick." They packed as if to make the presence of the past tidy. June packed the lamp Arthur had made in high school. Mark took the set of old, dented saucepans that had belonged to his grandmother. Carol took the cedar chest in the attic, and with her hands, efficient, practical hands, she closed it with a click that sounded like a verdict. Evelyn watched them work and felt the soft, long cries that lie at the bottom of grief. She opened drawers at random, pulling out handkerchiefs and postcards and the little brass compass Arthur had brought back from a trip they had taken when their children were small and sand got into the moments like confetti. She found a shoebox of letters. Her hand shook as she untied the string. There were letters Arthur had written her during long hospital nights, a postcard from a friend, one snapshot of their oldest, Carol, at 5, stuck out of an envelope with a sunburned nose. She smoothed the paper with a tenderness like prayer. When the children left that night, the house felt hollowed. The hallway runner seemed like a track that would lead out of the house and into a new life. Before she went to bed, Evelyn walked the rooms and turned out the lamps. She stood by the window for a long time, watching as a neighbor passed by with a stroller, as a car went down the street, as life continued in its ordinary role. She did not cry yet. Grief had a way of arriving in stages, and tonight it moved like a distant weather front. The next morning, the realtor came with a woman who knew exactly how to talk about open layouts and curb appeal. She smiled as if she knew nothing about hurt. They rearranged cushions and took photographs. A wide lens made the rooms look generous. Evelyn stayed in the kitchen while they worked, making coffee for herself and the odd handshake of the crew. She spent the day doing what she always did when pain came too sharp. She put it away. She called her neighbor Mrs. Dalton and asked her about the begonias. She read Penny's worth of the newspaper out loud. She put Arthur's slippers back where they always were. And beneath all the ordinary activity lay the pulsing, slow dread of a house that would become another family's. The realtor's card came with the mail like a tax notice, warm, impersonal, efficient. We will list it at market and stage it for maximum appeal, the note read in glossy script. How do you stage a life to be desirable for strangers? How do you make grief look like potential? Evelyn tried to imagine clean linens, the smell of lemon oil, the living room arranged in soft neutrals, her family reduced to an aesthetic.
This week, Carol said. We listed it on Monday. Evelyn's hand closed around the arm of the chair until her knuckles whitened. She thought of the children's bedrooms with their chipped desks and childhood drawings still thumbtacked to the closet doors. She thought of roof repairs they had all done together, Mark up on the ladder, Arthur steadying the base, the 4th of July parties where the grill always burned. She thought of how her life had been snugged into this place like a set of boxes in a closet, and now someone was asking to break the locks and throw everything out on the lawn. When they left the room, because they had other meetings to attend, other errands, other lives, the house seemed to inhale and then let out a ragged exhale. Evelyn sat there and tried to make the air stay. She made a tea and poured 2 cookies into a plate. They sat untouched on the coffee table. She walked the house again, stopping at the sink where her hands had scrubbed jars for 30 years. She opened the cupboard where Arthur had kept the spare batteries. In the bedroom she sat on the edge of the bed and thought of the many ways the future had been described to her. It had always been a ribbon that extended ahead mended with decisions. This morning the ribbon had been snipped. "Mom, we don't have time," Mark said. "We have bills. We have legal obligations. We put in notices with the realtor this week." The word realtor in Evelyn's head was the sound of a hammer. She had not realized that they had all been talking for some months. She had thought the conversations were about small things, a contractor, a ramp, cleaning out the gutters. She had not known they had been filing, planning, moving pieces with a cold efficiency that left no room for her disbelief. Evelyn felt a hot, bitter thing rise behind her eyes, an ache that had nothing to do with her age. "You can't do this," she said at last. "This is my home." Carol stood straighter, some of the ice that had softened in her voice melting away. "It's not just yours anymore," she said. "It's legally in probate. There are debts. We have to be practical. We can't keep subsidizing this forever. There is a certain kind of silence that follows an arrangement of facts that are unarguably true." The house held it like a held breath. Evelyn thought of the probate papers she had signed after Arthur's funeral, how she had signed them without reading much because grief made you trust the process, because when people told you to sign here and initial there you believed them. She had missed a clause or two. She had not known the reach those lines could have. "How long?" she asked finally, because what else were words for? "Then what did you come for?" Evelyn asked. The chair creaked when she shifted, she felt older than the chair. "To tell you we can't keep the house," Carol said. "We can't. We've decided to sell it." For a moment, nothing moved. The clock on the mantel kept its patient ticks as if it had not heard. Evelyn's mind moved through the rooms one by one, seeing them as film strips, the kitchen with its chipped sink, the back stoop where Arthur had built a small bench, the attic where holiday decorations slept in boxes with brittle tape. Their faces looked like paper cutouts. Her own hand seemed foreign. "Sell it," she repeated, tasting the word. Sell. It was an action that felt clean and final. "We can help you find a place," June said. "We'll help you pack. We'll get movers." Her voice was a mixture of practicality and a plea for forgiveness. "Where will I go?" Evelyn asked. The question was the shape of a small animal. It shook. Carol's hand brushed the edge of her chair, the touch almost reflexive. "There are places," she said. "Assisted living. smaller houses. You don't have to be alone. Evelyn thought of being alone and then of being surrounded by strangers with schedules. She imagined a small room with hospital sheets and a program of activities. She imagined people bustling with the kind of kindness that comes with forms and rotas. She imagined her memory, where it had begun to do things like misplace a name, forget the day of the week, being catalogued in checkboxes. She had never wanted to be catalogued. She had held, stubbornly and selfishly, to the belief that your life belonged to you, even at the end. She pressed her palms into her knees as if to steady herself. "May I have some time?" she asked. "You called and asked me for $20 and said you'd pay me back," June said, soft and suddenly cruel. "You did it twice this month." "Mom, we can't," her voice broke. Evelyn blinked. She remembered the calls, small requests for money, a plea for help with a leaking sink, a request to sign something at the post office, and she remembered the way her children had answered them without the warmth that used to follow. She remembered a letter she'd received from the bank, addressed in a neat, unfamiliar script that spoke of notices and deadlines. She had not opened it yet. Her pride had kept the envelope like a lid over a simmering pot. Carol stood. "We've been paying some things, Mom, but this isn't working. We started with the idea of getting help in the house, but then we realized the house itself," she pointed around the living room, at the sagging ceiling where a small stain had grown over the winter, at the stairs that had a half-loosened tread. "It's not safe. It needs work. It will cost a lot. We talked to Dad's lawyer. We talked to the bank. We looked into." Evelyn felt reality tilt. She tried to speak and the words came small. "I don't have any money," she said. She imagined the bank letter lying like a sleeping animal somewhere in the stack of mail. She thought of Arthur's pension, which had been modest, and of the funeral bills that had been bigger than she'd expected. She thought of the small habits, buying a carton of milk for a neighbor who couldn't get out, that had, quietly, whittled away what she had. Carol inhaled, then exhaled as if pushing something out with her breath. "We didn't come here to hurt you, Mom," she said, and that was precisely what cut the deepest. Evelyn had spent a lifetime believing that her children were built to protect her, like trees around a house. Hearing those words from the woman who had once needed her help with a skinned knee felt like the wind undercutting a riverbank. "No," Evelyn said before she could stop herself. The word came out like a bell being struck. "No. I'm not ready." She thought of Arthur sitting with his newspaper, of the way he'd laugh when she called him a fool for leaving crumbs by the sink. She thought of the bedroom, the living room, the little closet by the back door where she kept jars of jam and letters. She thought of how small a life could be and how the smallness itself could be home. "It's not about readiness," Mark said. He was trying to be gentle. He had become a broker of gentleness and paperwork. "It's about safety and care. We can't be here 24 hours a day, Mom. None of us can." "We're not asking to be here 24 hours, June said. "We're asking," her voice wavered. "We're asking for some practical help. To manage the bills. To tell you when to take the pills," Carol finished, and her voice hardened with something like fatigue. "To see that you don't fall." Evelyn's hands went cold. The phrase "manage the bills" sounded like a verdict. There were papers and statements, yes. There were things that had been piling up, the electric bill that she had kept postponing because she hated to be the person who said no to a friend who wanted to borrow money, the car that had been in the shop more months than it had been on the road. But she thought of her dignity, that stubborn grain that had never quite let her let the world dictate the shape of her days. I can take my pills, she said. I can. You forgot them the other night, Mark said. Mark said, it's not that. He paused, and his hands made the motion of reaching for something and missing. We've been talking, Mom. About? Evelyn said. Her voice had the small polite edge that came when you suspected words heavy as bricks were coming. Everything, June said. All of it. They had been saying all of it a lot lately. All of it had a way of forming storms out of ordinary clouds, doctor's appointments, the small ongoing argument about whether Evelyn was safe driving at night, whether the stairs were a hazard, whether it was time to talk about a more supervised place. Evelyn could feel the familiar anxiety settling like dust behind her eyes. Have I done something wrong? She asked, because sometimes that was easier, at least, than hearing the list. She had been wrong plenty, she could name them. She hadn't remarried after Arthur, she had insisted the children learn to fish on the 4th of July even when the water was cold, she had once lost a casserole dish and blamed the cat. But all of it felt stranger. It felt like weather formed at sea. Carol folded her hands and reached for the script she had no doubt written in her head. We're not saying you did anything wrong, Mom. We think it's time to make some changes. We've looked into options. We could move you into assisted living. Her heart did a small skip at the casualness of the note. Carol had the habit of writing like she was making a shopping list, brisk, utilitarian, unadorned. Carol was Evelyn's eldest, a woman with a postal uniform's dignity and a jaw that could close like a trap. She had 2 children, a mortgage, and a way of solving problems by stating them and then marching forward until the issue bowed. Evelyn put the butter back and took the short walk down the stairs. The house smelled faintly of coffee, which meant either Carol was already up or someone had been there late. The living room was a rectangle of people. Carol sat on the edge of the sofa like a ship's captain. Beside her, Mark, Evelyn's middle child, shifted in an armchair, sleeves rolled, jaw tense. Mark looked younger than his age because he tried to live with a kind of permanent readiness, as if he might be called into battle. Their sister, June, with a fringe of dyed hair and a laugh that had grown brittle, hovered by the window. They had all grown into shapes Evelyn recognized and sometimes did not. Mom, Carol began without preamble. We need to talk about the house. Evelyn settled into her old armchair, the one that sighed when you sat in it. Is the roof leaking? She asked, because that was the sort of practical thing they used to deal with together. Evelyn's house. Evelyn Harris woke to the same light she always had, a thin, pale strip that crawled across the bedroom carpet and touched the foot of her slipper. It was the kind of morning that asked nothing of anyone, no demands, no appointments, no text messages buzzing. Outside, the maple in the yard was already stirring. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked the slow, steady way it had for 2 decades, the second hand like a metronome for small rituals. She moved through the house like a woman who had memorized every inch of it. The hallway runner had a frayed edge where 3 children had once chased one another with toothless grins and wooden swords. The living room lamp still wore the faded silk shades her husband, Arthur, had chosen 50 years ago. She traced the edge of a framed black and white photograph with fingers that still remembered how to be steady. Arthur's smile in that photo was the one that used to melt away whatever grief might come. He had been gone 8 years now, she still kept his slippers by the bed. Evelyn was 78. Her hair had gone soft and white, and age had given her face the map of a life lived. She liked to think the map read honest, small disappointments and big mercies in equal measure. She had worked in the public library for 30 years. She had baked pies for school fundraisers and tended a garden that stubbornly refused to be tamed but always gave back tomatoes. She had taught her children to say please and thank you and, most importantly, to believe that family meant something that outlasted seasons. That morning, she opened the refrigerator and found a note taped to the door. Evie, please come downstairs. Important. Carol.